Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Break free from the forces holding you back. Get the life you deserve. Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, decrease depression, and start living your full potential. Thousands have used Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory, an evidence-based behavioral health breakthrough with incredible life-changing results. Getting rid of past trauma, having fulfilling relationships, increasing earnings, and living their best life. Now, the Foojan app is available to everyone. The app is Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory in the palm of your hand. Download the Foojan app today.
Do you wish to wake up one day and hit the Life Reset button? Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want by Dr. Foojan Zeine, helps you navigate crucial life areas, heal the past traumas, and cultivate fulfilling relationships and careers. Life Reset is your guide to a profound journey to reshape your life. Grab your copy on Amazon or Audible now and embark on a path to a more joyous and fulfilled life. Welcome to the Inner Voice, a Heartfelt Chat podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Foojan Zeine, psychotherapist, author, and the creator of the Awareness Integration Theory. So thrilled to have you join us today for what I promise you to be an insightful discussion. In this episode, I chat with Liz Long. She's an author and a mental health activist. In 1968, Liz Long's life took a tragic turn when her close family member went missing, pushing 6-year-old Liz into a shitstorm of epic proportions. 5 agonizing years later, Lynda's body was discovered, and her case stands as one of Canada's longest unsolved crimes. At 58, Liz confronted her adult depression by checking into an inpatient treatment center for healing. With unwavering grit and a touch of humor, Liz untangles the complexity of past, realizing that childhood coping mechanisms were never meant to be permanent. And now at the forefront of mental health advocacy, Liz shares her journey with us and introduces the world of Victimtown through the book, Navigating Shitstorms, how to find your true path when life gets rough. And I'm sure every one of us has had the roughness sometime, some of us more than others. And this is an amazing book of sharing what she had gone through. In this poignant narrative, she creates space like the Control Factory, the Guilt and Shame Café, the Denial Trails, and more, inspiring others to confront their own storms, discover resilience within, and find their way to Freedomville. And you can definitely connect with her at Liz Long's Rights. I think we had a beautiful conversation of her sharing what were the times that she just felt, I'm done. I don't want to be in this life anymore. And what kind of fear and what kind of belief systems led to that. And then what were the revelations? What is it that she needed to do in order to survive? And as she went through healing, what are some of the gems, the jewels that she actually found for herself that is she's sharing with you, not only on the podcast, but also her book. I love the conversation, and I'm sure you will. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, my YouTube channel, and connect with me through my website, foojanzeine.com, or any of my social media platforms. Share your thoughts with me. I truly love to hear from you. And without further ado, here's Liz Long. Intentional Parenting, a practical guide to awareness integration theory, written by Dr. Jafari, Dr. Foojan Zeine, and Dr. Manoukian, 3 experts in human development, is your step-by-step guide to raising a healthy child prepared for a culturally integrated world. You're supported in parenting infants to adolescents using the latest evidence-based scientific research on parenting. Order your copy on Amazon now.
Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, and decrease depression. Dr. Foojan Zeine's awareness integration theory has helped thousands like you get incredible life-changing results. The Foojan app gives you her evidence-based treatment in the palm of your hand. Download today.
Well, I'm excited to have Liz Long on our show. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Dr. Zeine. It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
It's so nice that we were talking about where you're from, and this is so fascinating that I'm going to share. I'm going to ask you to share actually where you are from, because hopefully it seems so beautiful that we just all want to get there someday.
Well, it was a fluke, a total fluke that I landed here. I live on what is called the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia in Canada. And it's not far from Vancouver as the crow flies, but it is water access. So there is a ferry that you can take, or you can arrive by seaplane.
That must be a very different life that to have to kind of navigate how to be there.
A little bit. It has been a learning curve. It's been not quite 2 years. And although you can get mostly everything you need here, there are times when you do need to get back over to mainstream society. And yeah, I got stuck in Victoria last year, actually, because I took a seaplane over there and didn't realize that they don't fly when it's foggy. They called me and said, "We're not coming to get you."
Whoops.
Because it was foggy. So you learn these things.
What made you make a decision to go that kind of a more like a secluded nature place?
It's actually a very busy touristy place in the summertime. It's just so beautiful. Really, it is so beautiful. And I was looking for a fresh start. I moved from Ontario almost 2 years ago. And I quickly realized that for what I wanted to purchase, Vancouver, North Van, West Van wasn't really in my price range. And a real estate agent introduced me to this area, and I bought my house on the internet, and I'd never been here, and I moved.
I love technology.
Right?
Yeah. And it has a little bit of a resonance to your book, How to Find Your True Path When Life Gets Rough, Navigating Shitstorms. And it feels like that's what you also did, right? Like navigated and found your true path in this beautiful place. It's so
Yes. Thank you. It's worked out remarkably well.
So what got you to want to write this book?
Well, it was not anything that was forever on my bucket list. I didn't aspire to write a book or study journalism. Life just unfolded that way. In 2020, my mental health took a serious nosedive, and I found myself hanging on by my fingernails, suicidal, and I checked myself into a private recovery facility for several months. And after I came out, I spent 3 or 4 months integrating back into the real world and giving some intentional thought as to how I wanted to live the rest of my life and what I wanted to do. And I decided that I was really pulled to embracing mental health advocacy. And that led to sharing my story, which led to writing the book, Navigating Shitstorms.
I love the name.
Yeah, it's a title that seems to resonate with a lot of people, you know. I call it like I see it, and everybody's had shitstorms.
Yes, we all have had it.
Everybody has, and we will likely have one or two more.
Most probably. But somehow if we could learn how to navigate and surf on top of it, then yes, as it shows up, then we'll surf. But at a time in your life, it got to a place where you said, enough is enough for me. I no longer want to be here. And then yet a part of you chose to stay and work on you and, attempt to have the healing for you and then share your path. Would you mind sharing as you were going through your depression? Because I think a lot of people hear about depression and sometimes like the depth of depression and don't know what it really feels like when you're in that depth, as you say, enough is enough. I no longer want to be here. Would it be okay for you to share what not necessarily specifics, but more of the emotional and the thought process that puts you finally into that place of deep depression and then stating, I no longer want to be here. And then we'll get to the part of you that says, well, I do, and then goes on.
I think it was a slow building up. It wasn't one huge event that sent me spiraling. It was, I call it the shit pile. The shit pile just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and every little thing felt so overwhelming. And I began to not see the point in anything. And it felt that it would be easier, that the only way to manage it, that it would be easier to just not be here anymore. It was like there was no other, I couldn't see any other way. That was the feeling.
Yeah, as you know, I'm a therapist, and I worked in suicide unit for almost 3 years, almost every night, working with people who were calling and they were at their last straw. And then there was a part of them that called. And this conversation that we would have, you get to a place where just fancy positive conversations don't work. It's not, it's not the surface conversation of, you're get better or this and that. It's very, very deep part of you that gives up and says, I have no idea what else to do. And there's another part of you that said, I want to learn, I want to know. And that part apparently checked yourself into a treatment place somewhere that could actually bring some healing. And what part of you, although you were done and you figured I can't do this, but what part of you said, no, I want to try this out?
I've been navigating shitstorms since I was 6 years old, and I'm very resilient, and I'm also very stubborn. And it was that last little piece inside that said, have you really tried? Have you really done your best? Have you really done everything you can, explored every opportunity to fix this? And it was a very, very quick decision. I was within 24 hours, I did the research. It was during COVID. It was November of 20. So it was still in the height of COVID. And one of my criteria for a place was their masking policies. I desperately didn't want to check myself into some place where I was going to be required to wear a mask 10 hours a day, every day. That would have been really hard for me. So that was one piece of it. And I identified, I think 5 or 6, I had a little questionnaire, and I called them up and asked the questions. I made a quick decision. I booked a flight, and then I called my best friend and I said, you need to come pick me up. I need you to take me to the airport. I'm checking myself in. And so it all happened really quickly. I knew that if I didn't do it right away, that I was afraid then I wouldn't. And I almost even didn't, it was a couple of flights to get to where I was. And the last one, I was convincing the voice in my head, oh, you don't need to do this. You can just check into a hotel and figure out your shit all by yourself. And I was really close to bailing. But the people at the place, as I call it, wasn't their first rodeo. And the woman that came to pick me up, she had my bag before I did. And so I was committed, which was the best thing I ever did.
Beautiful. Well, I'm glad that you made that choice. In your book, you talk about it all starts in childhood. And there's you talk about childhood fears and what there is a part of us that, has the resiliency, as you say, to go through it. But then although we have the resiliency to go through it, when we haven't had the skills to go through and process it, somehow it's almost like the parts of us split, and then, a part which is powerless and felt powerless at that moment and was victim, and all of those stays in a closet almost, while the rest of us learns how to handle and kind of survive it all and learn a lot of skills through the resiliency that you have and move forward. But then that part consistently holds the space that it's always powerless and it's always a victim. And that's part of the healing, to bring that little one out of the closet and show her or him the resilience that you truly have and the power that you've already had. Can you share, because I know you shared that in the book, can you share a little bit with our audience about your path through this concept of self-awareness?
Yeah, I never placed any real credence in the concept of how our childhoods affect us as adults until I was forced to, when I checked myself into the place. When I was 6 years old, a close family member, she disappeared. She was technically my aunt, but we were raised more like sisters. And for 5 years of my childhood, we didn't know if she was alive or dead. And this clouded my entire childhood and family, that fear. And what I learned, the most surprising thing I learned after I came out was that it wasn't necessarily the severity of what happened to us when we were kids that had the biggest impact. It was how, as children, we responded to it, and the stories we made up, and then the coping mechanisms we piled on. And you're absolutely right. I dragged all those things into my adult life, and they didn't serve me. So I think it does require going back and pulling all those things out of the closet. I mean, I shoved all that stuff really far down and locked it up and thought, I'll just forge ahead and I won't deal with any of that. But it never goes away until we do.
And did you make decisions about yourself because your aunt was gone, or?
Well, it affected me in a lot of ways. Yes, I was terrified. I was terrified of getting snatched. So that was a real thing. And I also learned at a young age, because my family was the hub for this crisis. My mother was in charge of managing the police and private detectives and all the efforts to find her sister, that my needs were not important. So that was also something I carried into my adult life. I didn't even know what boundaries were until a couple of years ago, let alone, and I'm still practicing boundaries. So that was one of the beliefs, and that the world was unsafe, and also that I was not lovable, that I was not worthy. I didn't believe I was a worthy person.
And that made the decision you made about yourself because of some circumstances that had happened, very harsh circumstance, very painful circumstance. You're saying that kind of stayed with you as throughout, and then you looked at the world from that lens. And at one point it was like, I can't live in a world that I think I'm worthless and powerless and not lovable. And at one point, like, this is this where you got, okay, if this is who I am, then I don't want to be?
Well, I wasn't even that far along in the awareness department when I checked myself in. It took a few months before, or at least I'm going to say a few weeks of being there before I was even open enough to doing all the work and thinking that it was going to be worthwhile.
Yes. There was in your book, you talk about going into the victim town and then leaving the victim town. And I love the way you've worded those. Can you share about those two? They're living in it and then deciding, that's it, I'm leaving the victim town.
Yeah. Victimtown is a fictitious place I created. And the places there all have names. And some of them include the Guilt and Shame Café, the Denial Trails, the Control Factory, the Anger Gas Station, and there's a few more. And spending a little bit of time in Victimtown and any of those places is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, there are the most beautiful gifts available in those places. That's where we learn our life lessons and become better humans. However, problems arise when we get stuck there. And the naming of the places, and each of those places has a voice that I also give a name to, which is that shitty voice in our head that that keeps us afraid and small. It's not so much about being a victim of a certain event or circumstance. What I hoping the reader gets from my book is that we are all, to varying degrees, inadvertent victims of our childhood. And until we go back and excavate that, the true healing and all the things that we yearn for are elusive.
Mm-hmm. And what is the part that you're sharing about how to live, how to leave the Victimtown? Because there's a whole part 3 that shares about how to leave it and how your experience of leaving it was. That you looked at your heart and the power within it, and listened to yourself. And there's a part of you that shook that concept away.
Thank you. It's a little bit different, not a little, it's a lot different, our journeys out of Victimtown to a place that I refer to as Freedomville, for all of us. In part 3 of the book, I share my journey and the things that worked for me, and also offer some other options. But mostly I would like the reader to understand that it's in the trusting of our own intuition and our own heart that will help us find our unique path. That there's not a 1, 2, 3 prescription that's going to help everybody get out of Victimtown and find their path. The voice that talks back to the Victimtown voices in all of the places is one that I call our heart voice. And we were all born with it. And as children, we trusted it and we listened to it. And then we learned fear because some shitty thing happened and we made up a story about what it meant, and we piled on coping mechanisms and forged ahead because we didn't know any better. But we can reclaim that. And it's like a coming home. And it requires us to learn to love ourselves. And for a lot of us, because of our childhood or other experiences, we hide who we really are because we're afraid. We're afraid of rejection. We're afraid of ridicule. We're afraid of everything.
Absolutely. Navigating Shitstorms, How to Find Your True Path When Life Gets Rough, by Liz Long. Liz, as you talked about going through and believing your intuition, and then we also talked about the part of you that says you're worthless and you're not lovable and all of that. Can you share how you distinguished between the two, the voice that was putting you down and the voice that you felt or heard from inside that was your intuitive, heart-powered messages?
It can be a little tricky sometimes. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes those Victimtown voices, they get really creative and they try to trip us up, particularly if we've been listening to that messaging for a long time. The thing that I lean into most to sort that out is how I feel, the emotions that whatever the message in my head is saying, how that makes me feel from an emotional standpoint. Does it feel reassuring? Does it feel hopeful? Does it feel good versus does it make me feel anxious or afraid? And that can be an easy way. And sometimes if that's not enough, then I'm a big fan of quieting my mind. Meditation can be a little overwhelming of a concept for a lot of people to embrace. So it doesn't have to be doesn't have to be difficult or hard, but we can feel with our physical bodies too, and take cues from there. If you envision going down one path versus another, and in that vision, do you feel, does your stomach get upset? Do you get a headache? Do you feel really tired? Sometimes our bodies my body can tell me as well what voice it is.
So when there's an uncomfortableness that your body shares with you and you hear it through the voice, you kind of state like, okay, this voice is not working. Whatever the message of that is, it doesn't work for me and for my body. And when you hear yourself say something about you or the world that your body agrees to it and it flows with it, you're saying that intuitively shares with me that this is the right path for me.
Yes. And not any one path or direction has to be permanent, so you take a step forward and then see how that feels and reevaluate. And the other tool I would say that has served me really well is to get curious. About what the feelings mean, And sometimes if I can't interpret it, I'll just say, well, this is really interesting. Why am I feeling so frustrated with this? Am I meant to do something else? Or am I meant to work through this frustration? And this process for me may not be what works for someone else too. So I want to be an inspiration and to help people start on their paths and to encourage people to find what works best for them.
Yes. And what, there's a lot of conversations about what if feelings are wrong? What if there's something behind it which is wrong? But what I'm sensing from you, you're saying feelings are one way that I monitor. My body is another way that I monitor. And then if something that I say in my head or whatever it is different than how I'm feeling or I'm experiencing in my body, the sensations that I experience in my body, then I, look at the duality of it and I say, what's going on? I get curious with this duality of, how come I'm thinking this, but I'm feeling this? How come I feel this, but I experience this in my body? And then you explore those from a rational perspective and then kind of choose a path that feels right to you at that moment. And then you're saying, I'm not married to that path. If the feeling changes or the things that come in front of me that have a different experience, then I stop and kind of assess again. And through this continuous curiosity of assessment with these, tools that I have, I kind of monitor where I need to go and where I need to be, which says in your book how to find your true path. And you're saying that my true path might be different than others, but I'm just showing you in this book how I found mine. And maybe that's an inspiration for someone who's reading the Navigating Shitstorms to also figure out with some of the tools that I did, maybe they can find their own tools in how to find their true path.
That's it exactly. And I only might add for people with a more logical brain that sometimes the other thing that I do is to analyze the thought and get to the foundation of whether it is motivated by fear or motivated by love. And that also can be a determining factor for me. All of the Victimtown voices are motivated by fear and control. And our heart voice always has our best interest and is motivated by love.
And how is the how's the experience of being and living in the Freedomville for you?
Well, I'm not always there. And, we always get thrown back to Victimtown these days. And that's the other beautiful thing about naming these places is that it prompts an awareness that happens a lot faster than without the names, you know? And I've had a girlfriend call me out on it, you know, in conversations sometimes. She goes, sounds to me like you're hanging out in the Guilt and Shame Café, Liz. So it's easier for me to recognize where I am, and then to take steps to get out. But in Freedomville, life is easier. I trust in all outcomes, and I have an appreciation that the things that I experience are meant for my soul's journey to learn and heal and find more joy. And I try to in Freedomville stay away from the judging and the labeling of experiences. They don't have to be good or bad. They can just be. And so many times we are quick to judge something as being, oh, this is really bad. This is terrible. This is not going to end well. This is going to be really hard. And, you know, if we fast forward, sometimes only months, sometimes a year or two, we often look back and think, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. So, like, we don't know. We have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring, or like anything truly is possible. And so I work hard, and in Freedomville, we stay away from those, the judgments about things and about people.
Well, you made a very important point, which is we need to identify, because when we identify it, you know, if is this guilt, is this shame, am I feeling victim, am I feeling powerless, am I feeling this and that, and what's going on with me, is my thought process in that you know, in a place that is not suited for me, or it's not real, I'm just making this up. And if I'm making it up, it's, you know, we make up things all day, but it's
we sure do.
You know, our things making up, and it doesn't work for me. So in identifying it, it works. And part of that identifying could be labeling, but you're sharing also that labeling does not have to have a negative judgment or a morality judgment around it. It's just a matter of identifying. So therefore, that when I notice and I identify it, then I can either choose it or walk out and choose something else. But the concept of the identifying, such as when you say, or when your, you know, friend says, hey, like, it seems like you have, you know, you're sounding like you're sitting in guilt and shame. The identification of that then gives you the opportunity to choose, especially the way like the cover of your book is a choice, you know, going between this or the other. Going to, if people who are watching this on the video, they could see that it is a beautiful car that is at a crossroad of either going to the Victimtown or going to the Freedomville, and you know, choosing those two and identifying creates that space for us to get to choose, because we go from this unconscious process of kind of flopping in there versus coming out and having the experience of, okay, where do I need to go? So everyone, navigating shitstorms, how to find your true path when life gets rough.
Yes, because that's the thing. We can't ever control or stop shit from happening. So it makes sense to learn how to be better responders for when it does.
Yes, and learning when to flush it down.
Yes. Indeed.
So
Indeed.
we're coming to the end of our conversation. Liz, anything we haven't shared that you really want our viewers and listeners to know about you, about your journey, about your book, any of it?
I'm working on a guidebook that I hope will be available in a few months from now, for readers to reflect and apply the things that I talk about in the book to their own lives and childhood. So I'm excited about that. And the other part of my messaging that I think is important is that it's never too late. It's never too late to address the issues, to do the healing, and to find the peace that you're craving in your life.
Beautiful. Where can people find you and your book?
I'm on social media. If you just search Navigating Shitstorms, I have a YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, And my website is lizlongwrites.com. And the book is available at all the places: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Indigo. There's an Audible version as well as Kindle version, and your local indie bookstores that are my favorite to support.
Well, it was a joy to have the opportunity to talk to you, to read your book, to share you with our audience and everyone who's out there. And, thank you for making the choice of taking this path and sharing it with the rest of us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here and to talk to you and your audience. And you can reach me through my website if there's anything I can do to support anybody. Please reach out.
Beautiful. For all of you who are out there, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And until next week, bye-bye.
Are you a psychotherapist looking to enhance your practice? The Awareness Integration Therapy developed by Dr. Foojan Zeine is a comprehensive guide to the principle and techniques of this powerful therapeutic approach. Join the growing community who have elevated their practice and expanded their skills by embracing Awareness Integration Therapy and witnessing its life-changing impact. Order your copy on Amazon now.